You Glock, you rock. Welcome to another edition of the Lock and Load Show. Tonight we're going to be talking about dark secrets. So here's the book. I'm getting some echo from my external page, so let me deal with that real quickly. So this is a book by Selko called The Dark Secrets of Shit Hits the Fan Survival. One sec. Okay, that's better. So it's The Dark Secrets of Shit Hits the Fan Survival. The Brutal Truth About Violence, Death, Mayhem, You Must Know to Survive by Selko Begovic. I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, but here we go. You Must Know to Survive by Selko Begovic. So I'll just read you the back cover really quick. Selko survived the Balkan War. Did you just turn on the back cover really quick?
There's a lot of echo.
Yeah. Selko survived. That's Dusty. I just muted you. Okay. So here we go. Take two. Selko survived the Balkan War of the 90s in a city under siege without electricity, running water, food, or food distribution. He's a household name in preparedness circles, sharing the reality of Shit Hits the Fan in thousands of articles and online courses. This is not a guide that will tell you step by step how to survive. This is a reality check that will tell you that everything you have expected and planned for is probably wrong. This is Selko's version of tough love. There's nothing watered down about it. It's a collection of stories, memories, and articles he has documented over the past decade. He has revisited those horrible days to give us a reality check we must have. It's a glimpse into the day-to-day events of Shit Hits the Fan. It's smelly, it's dirty, it's dark, it's brutal, it's real. And it's all the stuff that Selko rarely talks about because the memories are so ugly. This book contains graphic content. It truly gives you the terrifying reality of Shit Hits the Fan, and you need to know these things in order to survive if you ever find yourself in the chaos and mayhem of an apocalyptic situation. It is not a cheery, optimistic overview of Shit Hits the Fan. It's dark, it's brutal, it's shocking. It takes you inside the chaos and mayhem of Shit Hits the Fan and provides a reality check against your plans. It's not for the faint of heart. It is the real gritty truth about what it's like to live in a world where everyone has become something other than your ordinary human, where death and fear are constantly near, where evil comes out to play. Don't say we didn't warn you. All right. So that said, this is about 311 page book. I'm about 207 pages into it. It's interesting. One of the, I guess, there's a few controversial things in here for, like, I guess, gun channels folks. There's a part about gun confiscation, and he asserts that there's she's in the Balkans, not in the United States, but he asserts that there's basically no such thing as inalienable rights. If the shit hits the fan, the people in charge will, your rights go right out the window. So he talked about gun confiscation and how it worked in the Balkans, which was basically the government, if you legally bought a gun, the government has your name on a list. And so what would happen is that 20 or so heavily armed men would show up at your door and politely ask for your firearm. And if you didn't surrender it, they wouldn't rush your house. They'd back away and fire a couple RPGs into it. And then they'd move on to the next house. And so that was how it worked in the Balkans. So when you get to, would that ever happen in America? Geez, I hope not. But that's how gun confiscation works. So from his point of view, it pays to have all the registered guns that you have. You just surrender them when the police show up, because there's no point in fighting 20 armed men or having an RPG shot into your house. But it pays to have unregistered illegal guns that the government doesn't know about, buried somewhere in a cache, that after you turn in all your legal guns, you can go get your real shit hits the fan gun. So basically, that's the advice in this book. And that's not my advice. I'm just doing a book review. So people probably have an opinion on that. Obviously, having a RPG shot into your home would pretty much end your chances of survival. So let's see. We talked a little bit about water filtration, not to get into the thing with Dusty there that we were in the pre-chat, but they didn't have any, systems. Like, they didn't have like live straws and stuff like that distributed among the population. The people just got a bucket, some sand and rock, and some linen, some cloth, and they just filtered dirty water through. A common problem that they had was not, if they wanted to catch rainwater off a roof, was containers were hard to find to store it in. And then, so you get the dirty rainwater off of your roof, and then you filter that through your makeshift filters. That's what they did. And a lot of times, basically what he said about it is, most of the time, everything about the Shit Hits the Fan was dirty, it smelled bad, and sanitation was a real issue. And keeping yourself clean was like part of it. For a lot of people, it became something extra. But it was one way you could distinguish yourself from human versus animal. So one thing they did make use of is that there were overflights by probably U.S. Transport Aircraft Airlift Command, and they dropped MREs into the Balkans, into rural areas. And so he said it would like rain MREs, because I don't know if anybody have any experience when they drop them out of the C-130 or whatever plane. Some of them were designed to break up in the air, so it wouldn't just because if a whole big container of MREs was it would land on somebody, it would kill them. And that happens sometimes. But if they break apart and then it just rains MREs, then people could get them. And one thing they had in the MREs is they usually have some kind of wet napkin that people could use to clean themselves, and not just as a napkin. I'm not an expert on MREs. There's a few people who are. There's a pretty good website, I think.
Yeah, there's a wet nap in every MRE. And those flights probably came out of Italy.
Right, they did.
Yep.
And so they got used to MREs because that was a food source. So I'll talk about that for a minute. So people have talked occasionally, mostly on gun channels, if somebody says, the most common thing people say is you can't eat gold, you can't eat silver. And so what would happen was, what you could do with it is, because it is recognized as something of value, is you could trade it for a can of food. And so a lot of people, like say a gang, managed to get control of a bunch of canned food. They could sell it for basically, Selko told us he traded a gold chain for 2 cans of food. Now normally a gold chain would probably buy a couple thousand cans of food, but obviously the grid isn't up. So it's like it's the person with the food is setting deciding how much he'll give you for your gold and silver. So it's not worth nothing, it's worth something. And the people who did that are rich today because they got all this gold, and when the grid came back up, they could sell for some kind of price, fair price, which is not the case. If the shit hits the fan, so it's worth something if the shit hits the fan, and it'll be worth more after. But it's like there's two categories basically. There's something that's worth something, and then there's stuff you got to have right away. So if you need food or medicine right away, then the value of that goes up, and the value of your gold necklace goes down. So if, on the other hand, if you are like one of the bad guys and run a gang, and you could grab a ton of food and manage to somehow safely sell it, which is a problem, because I'll get into the lone wolf thing in a minute. I think it's dangerous to do trading if the shit hits the fan, because there has to be security, or you can there's a number of ways to get ripped off, including getting killed. So that brings us to the lone wolf part, and you talked about that, which is probably one of my current weaknesses, because where I live, if my plan is to disappear into the jungle, well, what happens when I have to come out, right? So basically, he tried to describe everything that was harder as a lone wolf. Like, so if you want to go into a building to search it for like, let's say you want to go to an abandoned building to search it for anything useful. If you have a bunch of guys, it's easier to clear the building and guard it while you're looking through it, while you're searching it and ransacking it. If you're by yourself, then you have to do everything, and it just takes longer. Including, you have to make sure nobody else is approaching it, or there's no security threats we're doing that while you're ransacking the building. Very difficult. And so everything just takes longer to do, and it requires more work, because you have to do everything by yourself, including your own security. And so everything just slows down about what you can do. And if you're going to go trading, if you want to trade stuff, that's very difficult too, because you're just one person. And again, there's a security problem if you're just one person. When you go to trade, you have to make sure that what you're trading for is actually something valuable, and not just a container of something that used to be valuable that has something else, was substituted with something else. And while you're doing that, you can't always watch your own back. So bartering and trading becomes difficult. Let's see what else. So that's a big problem for me. Yeah, another thing he wrote about was recognizing, which is everybody's first problem, is how do you know when the shit has hit the fan? And I was making a joke in the pre-chat saying, well, when the condo hot tub stops working, then I'll know the shit has hit the fan. But that's the first world problem. So how do you know when shit hits the fan? You don't want your first indication to be that some old guy shoots you in the back because he thinks you might have something. So you have to act differently when the shit hits the fan. You can't just assume that, you're walking down the street is going to be your walk down the street is going to be a safe walk through the park. It's not. And he was in a war zone where there was shelling all the time. And like one side of the street would be one military group, and the other side of the street would be run by a different military group. And I think he lived like on that street. So if you have a family, you can all help each other. And it requires more work in some ways, but it can be a source of strength too. So I've been told. And let's see. What else was there? I haven't gotten to the part about. I finished part 1 and 2, and part 3 is about death and violence. Let's see. You talked about shit hits the fan eating, because you'd have different food sources, and sometimes they may not look. They may have worms in them or something. So basically, said if you got like some kind of food that had worms in it, you would just eat in the dark, so you didn't have to look at them, which I thought was bad. But I think another point that he said regarding violence was that, like, if like 50 guys come down your street and you're just like 1 or 2 people, you're just gonna lose everything that you have, because you're not gonna be able to take out 50 guys. Most likely, you're just gonna have to walk away. So you have to know that surviving is more important than any particular item. So that's like if there's like 20 armed men from the government that show up at your door and want your registered gun, that's why you should give it to them. And then that's why Selco advises you to have an illegal, unregistered gun that the government doesn't know about. It's buried somewhere, which was apparently common in the Balkans, that people did that. And so let's see. But as far as knowing when, getting back onto knowing when the shit hits the fan, it was when, and this is the slightly scary part, is that a lot of this is the way it is now. It's like when both sides are so diametrically opposed that there's no actual real news coming from media sources. Sound familiar? And let's see what else sounded familiar about that. You could, if you saw something happening in your town, some kind of violence, it wouldn't be on the news. If you saw something going wrong, that wouldn't be on the news. So the truth kind of disappears, and your sources start drying up. But something interesting that happened today is that the British Parliament declared Zuckerberg, the guy running Facebook, as a what was the word they used? In contempt of Parliament. In the old days, the penalty for that was off with your head. That's going back to like when what's the guy that everybody that, what was the code word? The name of the guy that they used for the code word if Hitler would have invaded Britain. God, my mind is drawing a blank. I'm so stupid. I can't remember this stuff. But I'm sure somebody from England will tell me how stupid I am and give me the name. It'll come to me later. But so basically the penalty for that is no longer off with your head, but it used to be contempt of Parliament. So basically they'd said that he was in contempt of Parliament for not combating Russian propaganda on Facebook somehow when he saw it. I will say this about Russian propaganda: they seem to have given up on Venezuela because when the whole latest kerfuffle over food aid being stopped at the border of Venezuela first came on, the Zero Hedge is like Russia's one of Russia's propaganda sites that check on every now and then, and they basically had, like a few months ago, they said, well, this whole thing is a CIA coup plotted from the CIA to overthrow Maduro. Well, maybe it is or maybe it isn't, but they've given up on Venezuela. They aren't even trying to put any spin on it to protect their oil investments. So Trump gave a pretty good speech about that today. Yeah, the Cuban military units are in there propping up Maduro, and they probably won't leave without a fight. But they're going to try. We'll see what happens. But I don't think Putin isn't. I haven't seen any pro Maduro or the CIA is out to get Maduro crap on Zero Hedge, because pretty much every country in the world has, called him out recently. Not that that necessarily matters. They said the same thing about Assad, but Syria, Russia has a strategic interest in having a warm water port in the Mediterranean, and they only have financial interests. It's only money really in Venezuela, and not all that much. And they might be able to salvage that somehow. We'll see. I'm interested in reading the third part of the book. It was a pretty good read. It might push you out of your box. I don't know if you want to buy it. It was like just under $20 on Amazon. So, who is, I guess, not going to have a headquarters anymore in New York? Because, and what is this thing with Cortez? She thinks, Ocasio-Cortez said something like, well, we could just spend the tax money that credits that we were going to give to Amazon and spend it on something else that people need. She didn't seem to understand that you don't until Amazon moved in and started paying taxes, or their employees started paying taxes. New York there's no money there, but that never stopped them any. I mean, facts don't. It's just, how could she get a degree in economics? I mean, from anywhere, and not understand how anything works. So, anyway.
Has she ever had a cow that didn't fart?
Oh, well, yes. There's the whole thing about cow flatulence, and it's the whole California, and California had some law about having some device to moderate cow flatulence. They required every cow to have. I mean, how is a farmer supposed to make a living if they have to deal with stupid crap like that?
I have never seen one that won't fart. So, okay. The only way you're going to eliminate that is to eliminate all cows.
Well, I mean, if you eliminate them for steak, that's a good way to eliminate a cow. But if you need to have milk and half for your coffee, then for your 100% Kona coffee, and you might want to have a cow. So let's see. What else? I'll flip through the. He talked about some of the hard parts about specific things that happened, and dealing with the rage inside of you. That's pretty common. You don't actually have to go through shit hits the fan to have some kind of rage build up inside of you in capital letters. But he talks about having to deal with that kind of post-traumatic stress thing for him. Let's see. So part 3 is the truth about death and violence. I haven't gotten there yet. Let's see. Part 1, the difference between your plans and reality. So basically, I guess the thing is, like, from my point of view, if like 50 people come to my place and I don't think it's safe to stay here, if they're like, let's say they're just raiding everything in the center of Kona, and there's armed gangs of like 50 plus people, that would probably be more than I myself could handle. So I would just have to load up my car and get the fuck out with as much stuff as I could throw in there, and just run over anybody in my way, on my way to disappear into the jungle, where then I would have all those problems, not just jungle survival, but if you come out to trade and barter, how can you do that safely? So that was pretty interesting to me. I'll take a quick look at the external, see if anybody's been chatting about all this stuff, because I've been babbling for a while. Hang on, guys. Art to be everywhere. Terplinkster, how's it going? All right, let's see. Not too much happening in the externals. What else? The thing about water containers is pretty interesting. Having containers is probably, I mean, that's kind of been my strategy, is to have filter capability in containers and not really store lots of water. But that said, my containers are all lightweight and of limited size because I want to be able to haul them down the stairs. I don't need like a 200-pound, 55-gallon loaded water barrel to try and wheel down like a million stairs and then carry all the way out to my Blazer. That would be like ridiculous. Not impossible. I mean, but it's just, I have like a 5-gallon, 3-gallon, 7-gallon. I mean, I have all kinds of different containers, but they're not like huge drums. That would be, that's my personal thing. So, but that was interesting that I thought that was interesting that he said that about just finding containers to capture unfiltered rainwater. It's not always easy. And all the rivers were polluted basically because he said they were usually polluted from industrial waste when the economy was working. And then when the economy wasn't working, they were polluted by people upstream because there wasn't any sanitation or from dead bodies, or which were apparently everywhere, because this was a war zone. This wasn't just a collapse. And so he talked about there's different stages of collapse before the shit hits the fan and stuff, and where the system still kind of works, just very badly, and everybody's corrupt, and which also sounds familiar. But they're going in Hawaii. They're going to raise the GET taxes, and they're having a public meeting at the West Hawaii Civic Center tomorrow. I was thinking of whether I should just go down and tell the mayor of Hawaii Island that all taxation was theft and your government is organized crime. See how that goes over, like a lead balloon or something. But
well, how many days do you figure you should have, Hawaii,
how many days? What?
Of water and everything. How long will this situation last? Or could it last?
Well, since my particular focus has been on having filtration capability, it was, for me, it's always been a question of how much filtration capability do I have, and I have lots of that. That's what I've been building up on. Of course, if I have to walk away, one good thing about that thing is I can take a lot of my filtration capability with me in my Blazer. You probably can't load up your 20-gallon brewery thing in your truck, and besides, you said you'd never bug out anyway. So, hopefully, 50 armed men don't come and try and raid your place. But since I'm in the center of a small town, some measure of lawlessness would ensue. I have no doubt. Basically, when people start acting irrationally, I'm trying to answer your question. Let me not get off track. It's if all I have is empty containers that don't weigh anything, and lots of filtration, which is mostly in my medical bag and in my bug out bag and in my hydration bag. Well, that's, if I take my 3 bags and some empty containers, I'm pretty much good to go. If I have to bug out. But that's because I focus on, it's not a question of how much water, it's how much water can I filter. I mean, that's my particular view on it.
To be honest, that really is not a question that you can ask one person, and for that answer, for example, Hawaii's answer to be, the answer for uh, for me, you know, just one person's answer isn't the answer for everyone. For example, where I live, you know, the only thing that I really need to the only thing that I need to do in the event that, the shit hits the fan is, for a economic disaster, for example, um, I don't have to do anything. Where I live and, all that stuff, I don't have to do any of that stuff because if I get hungry, I can just go hunt food. Um, if I get thirsty, I have a way of filtering water, and there is a water source near me. So that those some certain questions have to have certain specifics behind them.
Well, it depends where you live, basically.
Exactly. It all depends on where you live, for the most part. Now, for the scenario, um, I have, let's say I have uh, 300 gallons of water stored that is, for drinking and cooking only. Let's say I have 300 gallons of water stored. Okay. Um, that's going to do me no good if I have to leave the area. I can't just, strap a 300-gallon water tank full of water to my back and go hiking down the trail. Um, there's a lot of different scenarios, and every one of those different scenarios have different answers. So, for example, another thing is I'm not a prepper for, the World War III or, another nuclear war or this or that. I'm a prepper for, we have a lot of tornadoes in Oklahoma. We have a lot of ice storms and power outages, and, we have to prep for certain things. But do I still, look at, what could be? Yeah, of course. And I still prep for that as well. But some of those scenarios does not, will not, cannot, cover me. For example, another thing is, let's say, all of our water table, our water sources, somebody hits the lake. That's where our water comes from. Well, now we've got a whole new issue. Some kind of chemical warfare happens, and our lake water has been hit. Well, then that creek that runs by my house is now no longer a viable source of water. We have to hope it rains and then do some kind of rainwater collection. Even then, that's a really big risk. That's a really big gamble, because we have we've had a lot of rain this winter, but any day that switch can be turned off, that valve can be closed, and that water is gone. So to be fair, I think any of those questions are very, very. I can't. No one
Location
person can give a correct
specific.
answer.
Yeah, they're location specific. I mean,
it's
I can answer
location
you
specific. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
location specific, and it's scenario specific as well. So
I mean,
any
I can
one of
tell
these
you
questions,
that I've thought out my options, and I'm I've been working on my water preps accordingly based on my scenario. I mean, if I could bug in, I mean, the most important thing to me would be some kind of getting one of those Kodiak solar energy sources so I could run my distilling machine. Doesn't take much electricity to run it. It's just a small boiling pot and a fan. And I've got something called the Pacific Ocean with an unlimited water. Plus, it's raining all day today. We had a pool full of water. But yeah, if I bug out into the jungle, then it rains. If I bug out up onto the volcano, it rains there every day. And what's interesting is that above, if you're worried about the mosquitoes in the tropical environment, above 2,500 feet, no mosquitoes. They don't like the cold weather. They stay below 2,500 feet. So, which is another thing. If you have a garden, if it's above in Hawaii, if it's above 2,500 feet, there'll be less bugs. You don't have to worry so much about bugs because they don't like the cold nights at the higher elevations. It'll be warm during the day, but at night it gets colder up there. And it rains all the time. Yeah, it's not necessarily where I live about having a gigantic tank. I mean, in some parts of the Big Island, you want a gigantic tank, or it doesn't rain so much because we have microclimates, and every section of the island is different. So you have to know your specific area and have a plan for bugging in, bugging out, on the road. I think you have to be adaptable. And again, doing things like gathering water is easier to do if you have a group of people, because somebody has to. It's just there's safety in numbers. If you have 12 people, a dozen people in your group, and they're all armed, then some people are going to be able to stand guard while the other people gather the water or process the water, or chopping wood. The same thing. If you want firewood, there's a certain, everything is all like interconnected, when it comes to operating in a shit hits the fan environment, because it's dangerous. At some point when the shit hits the fan, even when the grid is up, like I've mentioned it before, like just up outside of the Nennies, some guy with a backpack got his head caved in and was in a coma for quite some time because somebody wanted to steal his backpack so he could trade it for drugs. So walking down the street when the grid is up can be very dangerous if you have a nice backpack. And so when people say, well, how come you don't go walking around with, it'd be a good idea if you go walking up the street with a full backpack, so you get a lot of good exercise and you get used to carrying around a backpack. But if I did that, somebody would want my backpack and attack me for it. And I don't want to have to like slice and dice somebody just because I want to go for a walk with a rucksack every day. Of course, I could get some really cheap, crappy backpack filled full of rocks and do it, I suppose. And if somebody wants it, they could have it. Sure, here's my crappy rucksack with rocks. You take it. Good luck and goodbye. But so I don't do that because where I live, that would be dangerous. There was one. People are so into one guy. There was the story of last year where I was just walking down the road with a backpack. Some guy pulled up in a Jeep with a shotgun aimed at him and says, "I want your backpack. Give it to me, or I'll blow you away." So he gave him the backpack. Police went looking for the guy, never found him. So carrying a backpack, carrying something that somebody else wants when the grid is down is like 10 times more dangerous. If that shit happens around here when the grid is up, imagine what's going to happen when the grid is down. So having a group of people that can defend, that can watch each other's back, that can deal with moderate threats will help you get things done. And if you're a lone wolf like me, it's going to be more dangerous to do anything. And when you move it, you probably just want to only go out at night and not traveling on, or we're avoiding any areas that you might encounter threats, which might mean you can't just walk down the road to the store, which, I mean, they'll all obviously be looted or worthless, empty, because I think nobody will be working in stores if they can't get paid, and if the whole system collapses and the banks aren't working, then nobody could cash a paycheck if someone could magically issue them one. So it really depends on how bad things are, what kind of situation it is, and how area specific. So I can tell you what my preps are. They're pretty much on my channel. My water distiller countertop thing is on my channel, and I've got like I'm thinking on the last chat I posted a link in the comments to the Pure Hydration that described how that worked technically, the link, and how it was different than just the 19th. I think they invented it in the 50s or 60s, late 50s, early 60s for how the Sawyer works is just paper fiber filter where you just force the water through the dense fiber where only a certain micron particle can get through, and as opposed to that British system, which was a different technology, which basically used electrically charged particles to help grab any pathogens in the filter. So it worked different. It was more advanced, and so I just put it out there so people could have other technological choices besides the standard. And that's what I wanted. I wanted to have more than one way. And that's one the British military uses, and they don't do everything wrong. I mean, maybe the aircraft carriers suck, but filtering water, the British have been fighting around all around the world for quite a bit of time. They've had armies deployed, units deployed everywhere. So I think they may not build the best aircraft carriers, but they can definitely filter water. And I'll give them that much. Let's see. What else? Let me just look through the table of contents to jog my memory. The difference between your plans and reality.
Real quick, while you're looking at that, I wanted to say something if you don't mind.
Go ahead.
Here recently, there's been a town here in Oklahoma, not necessarily near me, but it came across our news, our local news. So I just wanted to share this with you guys, with every one of you that is listening. There was a town in Oklahoma that recently lost all of their water for over a week. I guess, I don't know what was going on. Something about the city had hit a water main or something like that, and they had to shut the system down for the entire town for a week. No water. Finally, water started getting trucked in by the end of the whole week. You know, the last 2 days, water started to finally get trucked in, and the city hall was offering water at their city hall for this community, these people in the community. Now, this is a whole week of not knowing how long the water is going to be off. The news broadcast says by the time the news heard about it, it had already been about 4 or 5 days. So people were getting tired of this.
I bet. Let's just talk about it for one moment. I don't want to interrupt you, but here's what happens when the water stops working. Your toilets don't function. No toilets. Your showers, no showers. No drinking water, no cooking water. If there's a fire, you have to put it out some other way or let it burn. I mean, how many things can't you do? You can't water your crops. What happens? Nothing works. And you get reduced to, that's why wet wipes in the MREs that was the only way people could, you lose your humanity without water. You smell, everybody smells, not just you, everybody smells terrible. And you lose your basic sanitation, which is required to, and you can't keep your house clean without water. I mean, everything literally goes to shit. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, you're 100% right, and that's what I'm trying to get at. Is once you lose your water, your city main, if you are done. You cannot function. You cannot cook. You cannot clean. Personal hygiene, as he mentioned, is not there. It's really, really hard to do anything when the water main is down, especially for a week. So,
And when people start living like animals, they start acting that way too.
exactly. Yes, there were a lot of people to come into town, and from what I understood, there was a lot of people that offered to come into the town and bring cases of water and give them away to the people that needed them and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, the toilet still needs to be flushed, dishes still need to be done, laundry still needs to be done. I still need to take a shower. Stuff like that happens. So, and this is in a normal day-to-day life. No type of foreign invasion, no EMP strike, no tornado damage, no ice storm. This
no
is
Civil War.
no Civil War, nothing. This was just oh crap, we have a water main break. Time to shut. This is nothing that could have been prevented, nothing that could have been prepped for. I mean, we as preppers, we prep for stuff, anything. And I prep for stuff like that regularly. But those that don't have, there's no warning. Here, we get we get a week's notice. Hey, there's some storms that may be producing tornadoes. So be prepared for that. We get prepared. Sometimes things happen, sometimes they don't. But this is not something that they can say, oh, well, we're going to do some water line work tomorrow and we're going to break a water main, so water's going to be off for a week. So you have to also think that a shit hit the fan scenario, an SHTF situation could happen from as little as an accident like that. So you can't, go by what the economy's doing. You can't go by what this is doing, that's doing. North Korea's pissed off and they got nukes aimed at us. That has nothing to do with, prepping and survival. Sometimes it has to be, the situation comes from home itself. And it's not, water is one of the biggest things. We use water for everything every day. So, I can't imagine what these people went through for a week of no water.
Yeah, I would imagine what they went through for years in the Balkans. I mean,
right. But, in this day and age, though, it's not something that's very common here.
It is around the world. It is around the world.
It is around the world, but not here in the States. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But those people that are affected by something like this on a daily basis, they have adapted and they are overcoming. They adapt and overcome their struggle.
They have to.
They have to, and they make things work. But here in the U.S. in 2019, this is one of the last things you would ever expect, and the only thing anyone did was panicked.
If it was safe in Hawaii, you could just run, jump in the ocean, and get yourself moderately clean that way. But that could be dangerous. I mean, I don't mean sharks. I mean just getting to the ocean and not being attacked while you're doing it. So you could basically, if people start living like animals and people start acting like animals, you could just assume there's going to be violence and sometimes organized violence. I mean, if you have something that somebody else wants, you're gonna have to be able to fight to keep it. Or never go outside your house and wait till enough bad guys show up that you can't handle it, and then you don't have a choice but to bug out. Because if the choice is death or just losing your stuff, then it's just stuff. You can walk away, and with your life, then that's survival, walking away with your life. So you have to like evaluate what the threat is and then make a decision. But the point is, when the shit hits the fan, people start acting differently. So it's important to recognize when the shit has hit the fan, so you don't get shot in the back by somebody who wants your backpack, or whatever you have, or whatever other. I mean, you could have all kinds of things that somebody else wants that you don't even realize. Let's see. And there will be organized gangs. I guess the way to get rich and the shit hits the fan is to sell food for whatever gold jewelry people have, and then wait for the system somehow manage to survive, bury it, and hide it until when the grid comes back up, dig it up and sell it. And so I would guess that for shit hits the fan, gold and silver, either you could get a really bad deal to use it to buy food or medicine, or you can trade food or medicine that you either stole from someone or however you got it, and then trade that for gold. And then when the system comes back up, you'll be a wealthy man. Speaking of which, cryptos did very nice today. I'll put up a little screen share for just a minute and then have a quick crypto moment. All right, so there's some green. Wasn't quite as high. It was a little higher earlier, but 5.4% bump for Bitcoin. Ethereum was up over 11% at part of the day. It's like up 8.3%. EOS, I don't like that one, but it's up 24%. I think it's has some issues with the people that are running that. Litecoin up 7.31. That's one of my favorites. Where's Dash? I'm wondering how Dash is going to do, because they're big into the Venezuelan economy. Dash is up 7.53% today. I'm wondering if Dash government, when the government in Venezuela hopefully eventually changes, that people will still be using Dash instead of the Bolivar there. It'll be interesting. Let's see how Digibyte is doing. God, it's been getting clobbered lately, but Digibyte is way down there, up 3.86%, but it's under a penny, so who gives a shit? We'll see how it all happens after Deutsche Bank goes down, and they're having more problems at Deutsche Bank. So, but who cares about that? All right. That was our crypto moment. It's nice when you wake up and there's some green. It's still all manipulated, just like gold and silver is, which have also been going up. So that's how that goes. All right. On the subject of gun confiscation, geez, I was reading America's First Freedom magazine, and they had something about Massachusetts. The governor is supposed to be was ordered by the court to issue permits for, let's see. Let me get the story right. I don't want to get it wrong. 1 second. Something to do with, basically the executive branch is ignoring the judicial branch. Okay, in Massachusetts, all prospective firearm owners are required to obtain a firearms identification card, FID, or a license to carry, LTC. Both licenses require applicants to submit significant training requirements and a background check. The licenses may issue with local law enforcement retaining significant discretion over who may or may not obtain a license. And basically, the governor has ordered all the law enforcement people to not issue any permits to anyone, no matter what, which is what the judges told them to issue permits. So this reminds me of a case in the Supreme Court when something like this happens. Basically, Andrew Jackson once famously said, or later claimed he never said it, which I don't know which is whether he actually said or said it, but when the Supreme Court made a ruling that he didn't like or agree with or feel like enforcing, he said, well, the Supreme Court made that ruling, let them enforce it. Whether he actually said that, I don't know. Leave that to history. But the point was, if the executive branch doesn't want to enforce judicial rulings, then I don't see how the judiciary can enforce its own rulings. That they don't have any power to do that. They can make rulings, and then the executive branch could either ignore them or follow them. Hopefully with our system, people would enforce all the court rulings, but sometimes some courts make ridiculous rulings, including the Supreme Court. And so I'm going to just leave that outside of the fact of what that particular case was about, which was a significant case. But just on the issue of brain isn't working. Just on the issue of executive versus judicial power. So we're having a little debate currently over Congress's power of the purse via the executive power of doing with the money as he wants to. We have three branches of government, and sometimes it doesn't work out quite so. Not everybody's on the same page. All right, I'll take a quick look at the external, see if anybody's out there. I see a lot of typing. General relativity. Yeah, it's very unique in Hawaii, that's for sure. Yeah, I would say the special ed. Yeah, Big Berkey is nice in that it doesn't use any electricity. It doesn't require any electricity. It's a filter system. So I like water distilling if you have the power to run it. It doesn't require a whole lot of it. And you can even do distillation with just wood fire if you have a system with the boiling pots, copper pipes, and some condensing tubes. A wood-fired sauna. Yeah, the one here in my condo is electrical. So as soon as the electricity goes out, it's going to be a cold pond. It'll be a cold tub instead of a hot tub. Yeah, I went in the hot tub today and went out there and fed the cat. The local feral cat stops by. The manager keeps a little container of cat food in the pool equipment locker. So whenever I show up, the manager's not there. The cat pops out of the bushes for free food. But he happened to be there sitting in my chair, and because it was raining today pretty hard, so he's probably just trying to stay out of the rain. I think lately he hasn't been around too much because of the construction of the Safeway shopping center next door, back of our pool. It's just been really noisy. I mean, they've had like a couple of bulldozers and backfilling and compacting land with one of those big things that they tow behind them. Those huge, like cylindrical things with spikes out of them. uh, that they just compact soil with, and it is real noisy. But they were off today for the holiday, and so it was a real quiet day. But it was rainy, so I just skipped the pool, did the hot tub thing, fed the cat, hung out for a while. But yeah, having a hot tub is really nice as far as just feeling human. But that would be a real luxury. So if the shit hits the fan, power goes down. That's the thing about Hawaii is that they want to promote solar energy and wind energy, and they have a plan to be completely self-sufficient and not requiring any oil at all. But by, I don't know, 2050 or something like that. But for now, we use oil-fired electrical plants. So if there's ever a problem offloading inter-island barges in Honolulu, you definitely would feel the remote problems of being 3,000 miles from the nearest continental landmass. Come home to visit you just when the inter-island barges stop from Oahu. That would be a big shit hits the fan moment. That only happened once in recent memory, and then it was during a strike before I moved here. So we're talking about 40 years ago when I think that happened. And from what I heard, yep, it was pretty chaotic. All the neighbor islands, when they couldn't load barge, when the unions just basically would not load any in our island barges from the mainland onto. They wouldn't load any cargo containers from the mainland onto inter-island barges. So that's where all the stores get their food from. Except for that, we do have some, and but they need gas. But like we have like a local cattle ranch, the Parker Ranch. It's a very large one. It's just a question of we don't actually have an official slaughterhouse here at all. I mean, there's a butcher just down the street, but as far as large scale, there isn't one. So unless you want to go out and, I mean, I don't think you're going to be able to just raid Parker Ranch and steal their cows and get away with it without somebody confronting you, without an armed confrontation, because they're quite valuable. I don't know if Dusty's still around, but the shit hits the fan. I imagine a full cow would go for a lot of money, or whatever was being used as money, or it'd be a very expensive barter item. But the problem in Hawaii would be getting the fuel to get the meat down from the ranch to the distribution locations along the coast where the people live. So.
Bartering a cow off is suicide. I'm just saying. I mean, you're looking at about 1,000 pounds of meat. So
yeah,
I mean,
everybody's going to want that cow, and killing you. You're just like a person. You're just like an obstacle, a speed bump that they have to go over to get that food. So unless you have like 100 armed people with you,
right?
I don't know how to do it.
I mean, that's why, you know, one of my main things about being a prepper is what I do. You know, it's not about, you know, this and that every once in a while. It's what I do day to day to survive is what I pride my prepping skills on. And for example, you guys have been there with me this entire season of hunting, and it's you guys know how stressful that's been. So I mean,
well, it started off good for you, right? And then
I was actually enjoying it, and then it started to become work. You know, if I don't get a deer, it's, you know, I'm not going to eat. And then after that, it's just like, come on. But no, it's like I said before, you know, down here, everybody already knows how to do everything that they need to do. to survive. So um, it's not really something that we need to worry about as far as um, you know having to worry about the neighbors when shit hits the fan. Uh, but I, if I get hungry, I can just grab my crossbow and go out and kill a deer or kill some pig or something, and I've got enough dinner for a while, and I can, in order to preserve it, of course, you know, and of course, this is a shit hit the fan situation, that I'm talking about. If if this is the summer and we're having a problem with food, then I've got to go out there real fast, you know, well, as quick as I can get a deer, shoot a deer, and then as quick as possible get it cleaned, dressed, and brought home, and get ready to go to dehydrate to try to preserve the meat for anything like that. For food. So yeah, definitely. Like I said earlier, what your survival skills, your SHTF skills, really rely on is where you live in order to do anything. So
Yeah, I mean, I'm aware how much I rely on like stores right now. I mean, like going to
yeah,
Safeway is just like so cool. I woke up today, I could have strudel and coffee for breakfast. I mean, thank you, Safeway. And
right,
then I had a salad for lunch. Fresh green leaf lettuce and all the fixings for the salad and stuff, and carrots. And it was great, a nice big
right,
salad. But good luck. I mean, I don't have a greenhouse with lettuce and stuff in it, and if I did, I mean, that would be a lot of work. And what he did talk about farming in the book, on a small scale for people, but most people don't have that. So uh, it's and to do it efficiently and effectively, I mean, to actually feed it would be uh, it's you have to be really focused on it and be really into it, and most people aren't, including me. I would like to, when I eventually get some property that's not a condo. Yeah, I definitely want to do all that, but right now it's all about, just as far as me, it's like how many number 10 cans of Mountain House do I have, or Augustin Farm stuff do I have put away, like that, and how much canned food do I have, and that's how I measure how many days I could last if I could keep all my freeze dried food and didn't have to, didn't have to, if I could not have to be in a confrontation with people who are demanding food because they're hungry and using force, and then I could last for quite some time. And I would add hunting to that, if I was bugging out to the jungle and where there's plenty of pigs, wild boar. But they're feral and they come out at night, so it's a night hunting thing. I still don't have my night vision at all yet, so that's electricity is probably first on my list of stuff to work on. Like one of those Kodiak systems, looks great at some point this year, um, and let's see. The night vision is still on my wish list, but I mean the good systems are pretty expensive, so we'll see. Right now, I'm just not trying. I'm focusing on not spending money on anything I don't need, and I'm pretty well prepped as far as water preps go. But I think the takeaway so far from the book is reevaluate your plans based on the actual threats in the the actual threats that will occur, where the threats come from, and which could be. I mean, it's so because when people say what are you prepping for? I mean, it's like general prepping. It's not. I mean, I could say, well, this is why you prep for hurricanes, right? And that would be a pretty basic thing that's even in the phone book that tells you to prep they tell you to prep for. But there's a lot more threats that could happen out there, and I just do general prepping. It's not really for any one thing that I think. I don't have some particular thing that I'm thinking is going to happen that I'm afraid of. I just thought this book was particularly interesting because it was written by somebody, with this co-writer. It's the stories of somebody who actually went through a real shit hits the fan survival scenario. And most of the people who run survival channels on YouTube really haven't been through anything like living in a war zone in the Balkans for several years and surviving. As far as the only thing I could just really leave you with about his book is he described was just how dirty everyone was, how smelly everything smelled. There were dead, and you got used to it. There were dead bodies everywhere, and people got used to just never taking baths or washing their clothes because it was just there was not enough water. It was just not something you could deal with, and the only people who seemed to profit were the people in charge of the gangs who were selling goods and trading them for precious metals, and then which they could sell for a lot more because they got them for basically nothing almost. Like 2 cans of food for a gold chain, really. Okay. If you need the food, then I guess it's a good trade because gold isn't going to do you any good if you're dead, but it will do you some good when the grid comes back up. And even in the Balkans, the grid's back up. So I guess it's just, it's like if you're going to college, it's like, think of college like an obstacle course you have to get through. I would say, in my opinion, think of the shit hits the fan the same way. It's an obstacle course you have to get through. And hopefully you can get through it without any psychological problem. And if there's going to be a lot of dead people everywhere, that might be difficult. And if there's going to be violence everywhere, it might be difficult. You're probably going to have issues about reliving it after the grid comes back up. And you're probably going to want to have somebody to blame. And sometimes it's just putting the blame on people. It messes you up yourself. So you have to be able to psychologically deal with not internalizing all the rage you have, because it's only going to hurt you. It's not going to really hurt the people that screwed everything up. So if there's like a bunch of people that you're angry at, whoever it is, when the grid comes back up, you're probably not going to want to go and start shooting people because then you'll be in a very bad situation, or blowing things up because you're angry. So internalizing all your inner rage, I mean, to a certain extent, I mean, that's something everybody has to deal with. There's always things in life that make you mad, and so you have to just not let it consume you, the rage consume you, because it will. You just have to keep that monster behind broken glass, and that's the way I think about it, is I never let the monster, he's behind a piece of glass that says break only in case of war. and sometimes he wants to come out and play. Like the back book says, sometimes evil wants to come out and play. I think he described a situation where people who, as soon as the shit hits the fan, if there was somebody they didn't like, they would just burn down their house and have a party. And you could say that was evil, and you'd be right. But that's how it could be. So I'm just saying, don't let yourself get injured by letting your anger consume you.
I would honestly have to expect that the first part of the shit hit the fan would definitely be a purge kind of thing.
Well, I would think the first part of well, what do you mean by first part?
When it first happens, it's going to be definitely a purge type of situation.
What do you mean by that?
As soon as there's no rule of law, people are going to go take their revenge that they couldn't do because they did not want to spend their life in prison.
Exactly.
So, how many people have you really pissed off in your life? Or really, I should say, how pissed are they?
Are you talking me or him?
Anybody out there listening? Because I actually do think about that. I know that there are people that do not like me. It's their loss, not mine. Okay?
Right.
And there are some people that are mildly pissed off at me, kind of like I cut them off on the road, kind of pissed off. And then there's people that hate me to the point they want to kill me. The thing is, those people that hate me to the point they want to kill me, they're pretty lazy people. I can't see them going to the trouble to track me down. And even then, I'm better at combat than them. So, I'm really not too worried about the bridges I've burnt. But anybody else out there, ask yourself that question. If it really did go down, is somebody nearby who's ambitious and skilled going to come kill me because now they can and nobody will do anything about it? Put morality and religion and all that aside. I'm just talking about the law.
Yeah, if there's no rule of law, then scores will be settled, debts will be paid, revenge will be taken sooner rather than later. I think the thing he said in his book was that even if you're like a Navy SEAL and you're geared up like one, it's the person who realizes the shit hits the fan worse. It's the person that realizes the shit hits the fan before you do that will kill you. If you haven't realized that the shit has hit the fan and somebody else does, then it'll be some old guy with a Mosin Nagant, or something like that.
Well, that's the kind of, having a score to settle is one thing. Wanting to take what you have, that could fall right in line with that.
Right. The point is the important thing is it's important to realize when the shit hits the fan, so you won't, so that won't happen to you.
Okay, when you call 911 and there's nobody at the other end, the shit has definitely hit the fan. You might call 911 and get somebody at the other end that never shows up. Well, you could say, yeah, but that's just living in Detroit. But when public services start eroding, all right, not just the stores aren't getting restocked, but the roads are being blocked, traffic signals don't work, the power is going out and staying out. It might be up and down, up and down. You're losing water pressure. The gas will pretty much run for a while on its own, but I don't mean gasoline, I mean natural gas. That's another thing. No longer bring in gasoline. You're told not to go to work. There's the emergency broadcasting service is actually being used, and it's not a test this time. I mean, there's all kinds of things that I think would be pretty good indicators, don't you?
Well, yeah, but it's really, I guess, for each individual person who lives in their own different situation, they pay attention to different things. So for somebody else who doesn't live your kind of life, they the shit may hit the fan for them before it does for you.
Well, I mean, okay, let's say things are bad. Let's say there is civil unrest or something's going on. There's some sort of natural disaster. There's something. There's something, and it's not good. But, okay, you have one person that freaks out, and you have another person that stays calm. If that person freaks out, they may take things out on that person who stays calm, and you can't necessarily count on law enforcement to come save you. They may be tied up, busy, the phones may be out, whatever it is. You can't count on your security system. You know, there lies issues with that as well. The internet's down, power's down, your battery backup's out. The security guard don't show up to work that day, or he shows up but he ain't armed, or they call the police and they have the same result you do. So all these things that people have been counting on to keep them safe aren't going to keep them safe. So it's up to you to keep yourself safe in that situation where somebody jumps the gun and panics too soon.
What he said, one thing he said was one of the symptoms of the shit hitting the fan was your information sources they don't provide you with information. And when, specifically what he says was when the TV stations tell you to stay tuned for local, for updates on problems in your location, don't stay tuned. That will be the news media will be the actual like people on channel 2 or whatever. They'll be the last people to know what happens. And it was really funny. He described a bunch of situations like that. Is like that when the planes from Italy were flying over the Balkans, there were rumors. Everything was like based on rumors, which spread like wildfire. And there wasn't any internet or anything. So it was basically like some guy, some drunken bum on the street starts a rumor that this is where the next MRE drop is going to be. And everybody rushes to that location. And well, if that guy was right one time, he'll be right that. I mean, so what I'm trying to get at is when your typical sources for information start being less and less, they provide you with less and less actual information. And if all they do is tell you to stay tuned for more information, don't stay tuned. Find a different source of information. And if that's just going out on the street to find what happened, then I guess that's what you got to do. One thing I can note just from when there was a fiber optic cable that got cut that goes over the island here. I mean, almost everything, including 911, didn't work. Okay. I mean, the police could still dispatch over the radio to their units, but they couldn't really get calls into the police station. And like credit cards didn't work anywhere. The banking system didn't work anywhere. The ATMs didn't work. And so when I went into like the one time to get like my annual safety check that I'm supposed to get I got one at the Toyota dealer who took over when the Chevy dealer closed up. And people at the Toyota dealership were like, well, why are we even showing up for work? Even because the entire paycheck system is on a cloud, which doesn't work anymore. They don't have access to it because the internet is down. And even if they could issue a check to all their employees, the banks were incapable of cashing them or depositing them or anything. And that went on for like a week before they got that cable fixed. So it was like, why are they still showing up for work if there's no way that they could possibly be paid? Well, they assumed that
they get paid later.
Well, but that's the thing is that people don't go to the shit has hit the fan because they're always, that's what the media will tell you is that things will get fixed really soon, the grid will come back up, this is just a temporary problem, stay tuned and listen. So what you don't want to do is stay tuned and listen, because you want to find out what's actually going on. And because maybe they're just telling you that they're going to tell you that everything is going to be fixed. It's just some temporary disturbance, or they won't say anything about it at all. if it involves like civilian unrest or something.
I don't know. I don't know. The way, okay, whenever there's a weather situation, the Weather Channel 24/7 is playing it up way past what it really is. Whenever there is a police situation in a town, they've got the news, the local news on it, and then they put it on CNN, and everybody's watching, and they're just playing loops of the same footage over and over again.
CNN? You actually watch CNN? Okay. I wouldn't know what's
The
on
whole
CNN.
point I'm saying is when there's an air quotes emergency situation, you know, it's like one guy shoots up a place and CNN is reporting that it was 3 people, and you know, or the Weather Channel says that a hurricane's coming and it's going to be the worst in history, and it's a Category 1 and
minor situations. Like one person,
but it's the same scenario. The same scenario. That those people that hype things up are going to hype up SHTF. So even if it really is happening, we're not going to believe it because we've been lied to them so long that we. When SHTF happens, you're not going to see Channel 2 go, "Oh, it'll be fine, dude." No, they'll be dude. They're still going to try to get ratings all the way to the end.
They'll be trying to get ratings after the end, but it's not going to be covered. If it's like one guy shoots up a school, or 2 guys shoot up a school, or shoot up a shopping mall, that'll get coverage. But if it's like federal troops versus the state of Colorado or something like that, National Guard versus the California National Guard versus the Marines over fighting over the wall, that's not going to get coverage until it's all over.
Yeah, because nobody's got a cell phone and YouTube.
You don't think they can shut down the internet by pressing a button? You don't think they could censor that shit?
You could jam communications with one aircraft, but it's not this in the same way that you're talking about. You're talking about somebody literally in a room with a button and all he's got to do is push it. And it's like, no, but you can disrupt stuff with electronic countermeasures.
I think there is somebody in a room with a button.
Nah, I don't. I don't.
And I just don't think if it's a real if it's like if the Russians have landed like in Red Dawn, well, I'm not sure exactly that Channel 2 is going to be covering that.
Oh yeah, my local station will be out there making it sound like not only did the Russians land, but so did the North Koreans, the Chinese, and whoever the hell else don't like us, ISIS. And it'd be like, but really it was just a couple foreign exchange students that had a parachute accident, right? And the next thing you know, people think Red Dawn's happening because they hyped it up. But I will say this, if Red Dawn happens, all you guys that have been whining and crying that you want a real Russian AK, now's your chance, dude. Now's your chance.
I know I have a... Where's my red... Oh, here it is.
Russians need to take us one piece. That's why they're here now.
All right. All right. I don't think I have any more Red Dawn sound clips, so...
I think that maybe it's just that you and I have two differing opinions of scenarios and all that. I really don't think that the news is necessarily going to lie to us in the sense that they're going to tell us to stay calm when we don't need to. They might be ordered to, but the way the news sensationalizes everything, they'll play this up too. They just will.
Yes, it was we've been invaded by people wearing "Make America Great Again" caps.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what it'll end up happening.
So round up all the Republicans.
I will say this though: somebody who survived over there has got probably some pretty decent survival skills in SHTF, no matter what. Whether they did good things, that they managed to keep their morality the whole time, or whether or not they did bad things. Now, I'm not going to judge whether they're a good person, a bad person, or whatever. When we were over there, it was pretty bad. It was really bad. And it was another one of those, why are these people doing this to each other kind of thing? But you know what? It's not America. It's not. They've been fighting over there forever.
In the Balkans.
They don't like each other. Yeah, they don't like each other. and you look at how small that area is. It is tiny. Okay, it is, and
you
it's
were
like,
posted
dude,
there. You were posted to the Balkans.
Yeah. It's tiny, and you're just thinking, dude, how can there be anybody because they just kept killing each other, and you're trying to figure out how many people could fit in the same landmass in America, and it's like significantly less, I guess, and it's just, I don't know. I mean, they had cities and they had stuff like that, and they just bring up the same old from years and years ago. Yeah.
Muslim versus Christian, and you can go all the way back to Vlad the Impaler for that.
I don't know the entire history of the region. I don't know everything, but I do know some things, and I'm just wondering if after the Soviet collapse there was nobody to keep order. Do you know what I mean? The Russians were doing bad things to these people, but they were doing it. They were doing it kind of on the QT. All right. So once the big bad Russians weren't there to keep order, things fell apart yet again. It's the same thing that happened when the Roman Empire left an area. Things fell apart. When the British Empire left an area, things fell apart. So sometimes having that big bad power.
Why people celebrate St. Valentine's Day when it was isn't it about when basically the Roman Emperor Valentinian got killed in a battle against the Goths or I forget who.
Oh no, I thought it had something to do with the Chicago typewriter, but
no, that's a different St. Valentine's Day massacre is different than the actual idea of St. Valentine's Day was supposed to be about love. But how could it be about love when it was about the Emperor of Rome, St. Valentine, getting massacred by the Goths? So, I
don't know. It's a Hallmark holiday, but there. You know what? These big bad empires that are not exactly good to their people. They do keep order. I'm not saying they're necessary, but it's interesting to see what happens when they leave. Things just fall apart. The locals start fighting and everything else. We would not have terrorists today if Great Britain owned most of its empire still. If they owned and controlled most of their empire, we would not have terrorists today.
We've had terrorists before Britain.
These terrorists come out of countries that used to be ruled by the British. And when they gave up their territories, they gave them their independence.
Well, it used to be ruled by the British, but before they were actually ruled by other people, before the British were around. So.
Well, I'm just saying, and I'm not calling the British benign. I'm not saying, they're great, they're perfect. No. But it's just interesting how, when they leave, all these things happen. So
you want to reform the Soviet Union to bring order back to Europe?
No, not necessarily. But instead of taking advantage of your newfound freedom to make war with your neighbor, why don't you take advantage of your newfound freedom and make your country great again?
Because that's not what people do. That's not how.
That's how we do it here. That's how we do it here, America.
Well, that's how we're supposed to do it here, but haven't you seen everybody fighting over everything lately?
I see a lot of fighting in our community all the time. It drives me nuts. I'm guilty of it too, but it's just, but it's not that sort of fighting.
Let who is without guilt throw the first stone.
Yeah, something like that. But if this place turns into Bosnia, it'd be a good idea to be armed and be able to distill your own water. But
it'd be a better idea to be somewhere else. Is where it would be.
Where are you going to go? Canada? No,
Hawaii.
thanks.
Hawaii.
Why would I go to a place like that?
The beach, dude. The coffee.
I don't like the beach.
What about the coffee?
The coffee's pretty good, but got coffee on the mainland.
Can't grow it there.
You know what? If I had lottery money, I still wouldn't live where you live. But hey, man, you have different criteria than me. It's kind of like everybody having a different prepping plan. We're all different. But no, the way I look at it is, if there was some sort of situation where things were going down, I don't think the news would tell us to stay calm. I think they would sensationalize it, so we would know the difference.
They would tell you to stay tuned. When they start telling you to stay tuned, that's how you know that the shit is starting to get real. So stay tuned. I'm not the media, though.
You're the social media.
I'm like the smallest social media on gun channels almost. So that's okay. I'm happy. I am more than my YouTube channel. I am not my YouTube channel. Okay. It's like for some people, their YouTube channel has gotten so big. It's like, without YouTube, who am I? Right. Well, I'm not that big, so I can be a person and not be my YouTube channel. But yeah, that's like, you know, when I say, like, call me if anything happens and I'll hop on a plane. I mean, for something bad to happen where you and Dusty couldn't handle it, it would have to be pretty bad. The way I see it. Because you and Dusty could handle a pretty fair amount of shit all by yourselves.
Here's the thing. We tell you that to get you to hop on a plane. Then when you got here, you go, all right, what's the emergency? Be like, we got you out of there. All right, good. So here's the plan. And you'll be like, you called me over here to get me out of it? It's like, dude, don't go back. Here's an AR-15, right?
I thought you were going to let me have your AK, man.
Well, I mean, you're used to it. It's a Wasser, but, you know,
yeah, I like Wassers,
guess.
But actually, my first one was after you tell me your plan would be like, you call that a plan?
Okay, so this is what we need to do.
Who's in charge? Who's in command of this chicken shit outfit? How do I get out?
We need to have a war council, and the war council's held in Dusty's beer shed. So anything can happen in there.
The now, which will further after that one meeting, will now be renamed the Water Distillery.
Yeah, nothing will necessarily get resolved, but we'll have a good time arguing over it.
Well, we'll figure out who's in command by playing poker, or we'll cut the cards.
We'll play poker. We should have a shooting contest.
No, that's just figure out who's the best rifleman is. That's being a good rifleman doesn't have anything to do with being in command. So if you can win,
poker does.
Yeah, it requires using your mind to win. Got me? Are you with me? You can't win.
You might as well just tell riddles.
Yeah. All right. So I'm interested in reading the last section of the book, and I'll probably talk about it next week because I think some of you might be interested on the part. There's basically 3 parts of the book. Part 1, the difference between your plan and reality. Part 2 was let's see, that was part 3. Part 2 was the shocking reality of shit hits the fan, which was like, it smells, it's dirty, it's ugly, and it sucks. And the third part was, which I haven't read yet, is the truth about death and violence. All right. So stay tuned.
Can I comment about 2 things that you talked about earlier? I couldn't unmute because I was at work.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the first thing is about the whole having more people so you can have somebody help you search a building and have somebody guard the outside. I think that under the right circumstances, yeah, that would be better. But how well do you trust these people? How well do you trust the guy standing guard not to be, space cadetting and actually paying attention? How much do you trust the person going in the building with you to search it not to see something and stash it inside their jacket or something instead of saying that they found something that could be useful to the team? How much do you trust that these people won't double cross you or leave you behind or stab you in the back or whatever it is.
In his case, it was family. In his particular case, it was family.
Okay. In a situation like this, I think families come together. In the real world, families sometimes don't get along, but I think in a situation like this, that's where the family unit gets stronger. It's kind of like whenever there's a death in the family, at first everybody comes together, but then later, after everything settles, they fight over the money. And then the other thing was...
or they just fight.
Or they just fight. The other thing was gun confiscation. So here's the deal. If you live in a state with registration, whatever you have that's registered, they're going to know about and they're going to come for at some point. If you live in a state that doesn't have registration, do everything you can to keep registration from happening. If they make registration happen on a national level, there'll be a date that the law goes into effect. Up until that date, people are going to be buying and selling guns from private owners left and right, and the value is going to go through the roof. Some people are going to be willing to give up some of their stuff because of how much money they're going to be able to make. And some people are just going to want to get rid of stuff or get stuff while it's still not on a list. After they make national registration a thing, what will happen is any private sales will have to go through a dealer, and any dealer sales will be registered. There'll be I should say the universal background checks won't necessarily be a registry, but now everything's traceable. Well, now something is traceable if it's found. So here's the deal. What they'll do is when there's an incident after they do universal background checks coast to coast, you can still say, well, my state doesn't have a registry, I'm still good. You are for a while. But the first time somebody commits a crime and they go, this person had a weapon that was not registered because we didn't have a registry. So despite the fact that we have national and universal background checks, now we need a national registry. So here's the thing. Everybody has to go down to their local law enforcement and register all their guns that have not been registered up to this point. And even if your state doesn't have registered, they're going to make it a federal thing. So you're going to have people who are going to refuse to register their stuff. You're going to have people that bury their stuff. And then once again, you're going to have people that sell their stuff for a profit or sell their stuff illegally or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, you're going to have some people that comply and they're going to register their stuff. And what they'll do is every so many years, they'll have an amnesty. They'll say, you know, our first registration, you had to, within the first year, you had to do it. And after that, you're a felon. And then 5 or 10 years on the road, they'll go, we'll give amnesty to anybody who comes in and wants to register anything. Like this is what they've done in Australia. And a few
don't
people
get me started about Australia. I almost killed
what I'm saying is
just a few days ago.
What I'm saying is national universal background checks will eventually lead to national registry. Once they've got an absolute registry of guns, that's when they literally can go house to house and get the guns at their leisure. Because if they knock on your door and they go, is your name John Smith? Yes, it is. Okay, you have 4 guns. Give them up. Oh, I sold them. Really? Well, did you do a universal background check? Well, according to our paperwork, they're still registered to you. So we're going to tear this house apart, and if we don't find them, we're going to arrest you, your wife, and your kids, and we're going to hold you until you tell us where you've got them hidden. And even if you did get rid of them, even if you did move them out of state, even if you buried them in a bed, whatever it is, you got to think at this point, do I want my family incarcerated? Do I want my house torn to pieces? So this is something that could, something that, I understand. They fired RPGs. They're not going to do that in America. They'll tear your house apart. They'll take you to jail. Okay? But if this universal background check that they're talking about on a federal level passes, even the free states won't be safe eventually. And eventually they'll use this as a reason to institute a national registry. And at that point, we could turn into the Balkans but they're not going to shoot RPGs in the houses.
Right. In case you missed the earlier part of the chat, I did describe what happened in the Balkans. He said that basically 20 armed men would come and politely ask you for your guns that were registered when you legally bought it. And then if you didn't give them up, they would walk away and fire a couple of RPGs into your house to move on to the next place. And so we would hope that kind of thing wouldn't happen in America. But the controversial thing that he said was that based on his experience, there's no such thing as inalienable rights. What do you think?
They come knocking on your door with a piece of paper that shows that you've got your guns registered, so they know exactly how many guns you've got, the serial numbers, what model, blah 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 blah.
So,
all right, and your place of residence is here, and you need to give them up. You can scream Second Amendment all you want, you're going to get tased. You know.
So do you agree that practically there is no such thing as inalienable rights?
I think as long as there is a civil type situation, then there are. As soon as you start dissolving that, devolving that, then yeah, they're going to go away fast. They're going to go, okay, and some people can go, well, look at the way they tax us, and look at some of these other things they do. Look at red flag laws. Yeah, it's starting to dissolve. It's starting to unravel here. And when I say it could be like the Balkans, I don't necessarily mean that we're going to be this wasteland and there's going to be roving gangs running the street and there's, you know, people getting killed over religious persecution. If anything, our government is trying to turn us into England more than they're trying to turn us into Russia or the Balkans. What he
specifically said about the news was that they were constantly looking at the TV trying to find out about the gunfight that was happening on their street, and there wasn't any coverage of it. Okay, and they just wouldn't cover it. And no matter, there could have been a tank shooting.
Okay, wait a minute, wait a minute.
Cover it. That was what he said happened in the Balkans.
Okay, you got to understand, the gunfight on their street isn't two guys with revolvers at high noon. The gunfight on the street is military arms and tactics. You'd be suicidal to be a news crew out there trying to cover it.
Well,
I don't know if you realize this, but these guys had access to military equipment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, there were militaries. There were the Serbs, both sides had access to military, but there were snipers
even
everywhere.
the roving thug gangs had access to this crap.
And yeah, they basically would steal them from military bases. So the gangs had military tactics, and people, would. But the point is that the violence was happening, and it wasn't being reported on the news. And yeah, it was military units shooting at each other, or paramilitary units shooting at each other, or combinations of street gangs, military units, paramilitary units, and local militias. It was everybody shooting at everybody, and it wasn't being covered because it was too dangerous. For 100 reasons, it wasn't being covered. But if you just sit there looking at for information on the TV, there ain't going to be none. That's what happened when he said they kept looking for, how come nobody covered the mailman getting blown away yesterday in the massive, conflagration down the block? They're not going to cover that, so you have to get your news sources from your hard news sources from other sources than just the 9 o'clock news. When the shit hits the fan. So now that everybody's all scared to death, or the point is hopefully has been to just reevaluate your plan and make whatever adjustments you think you need to make that for you, and stay safe out there. And I'll talk about the last part of the book next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Lock and Load Show. God bless America. Long live this republic. Stay safe. Aloha. See you next week. Oh, stay tuned.